Hello and welcome back to Rambling Reviews. We're doing Infinity Train. We're on book 3. We are at Le Chat Chalet, which I'm still pronouncing terribly, but it doesn't matter. What a absolutely banging episode. I don't know how else to phrase it. First of all, obviously I always love the cat. Second of all, the whole backstory to Simon and the cat is fascinating. Third, Kate Mulgrew killing out the performance. And then most importantly, not only Randall, but quite a bit of Randall. And let's be honest, surprise Randall episode, the best kind of Randall episode. So let's break this one down. For those who don't remember, if you're watching this in the future and you haven't just seen it like I have, this is the episode in which it starts. They're in a snow car. It's unclear if it's the same snow car as the initial one that Tulip was in. It does look a lot like it, and that did seem... I mean, it's not an exact match. Like, the landscapes look different, but it looked huge, that one. So, it could just be a different section of the original snow car. Yeah, it might not be, but I think there's a chance it could be. There's nothing that indicates it either way, so I think that debate shall rage on, unless somebody tweets at Owen Dennis and asks him. I might do that, actually, after I've recorded this. But anyway, they come across a little chalet because it starts to snow really heavily. They go in, they discover the cat. That's her holiday home. There's clearly a history between Simon and the cat, but Grace is worried because she's just discovered her numbers are going down. So basically, they're both quite distracted with their own problems. Simon gets annoyed that Grace isn't realizing how uncomfortable he is to be there. And eventually, it sort of culminates with Grace being honest with Simon about the situation. We learn that Simon used to have spend all this time with the cat, and then she abandoned him and left him one of the what are they called? Gomes? Which I didn't realize was their name until this episode. I've been calling them like the cockroach monster, the black sort of cockroach monster thing, since season 1. Turns out they do have a name. Who knew? Everyone, by the sound of it. I googled it. It's on the wiki page. It says where it's never been said out loud in the show until now, but like it's been in the credits and stuff. So, oh well. Yeah, because I guess somebody supplied the voice for those things, so I probably could have just done that. It never occurred to me to check for that because they're like, they don't actually speak, so I never really thought to look for a voice artist to find out what they were called. But there you go, Gomes. I now know. So it sounds like she left them to one of them to die, basically. Although you get the impression there's more to it. And then they discover that the reason that they've been trapped by the snow is that they were having a snowball fight. Randall is literally the snow, and he decided he wanted to join in, and that's why they're suddenly snowed in. So they convince him that there's an armistice, and they're free to go. And there's this very, very heartbreaking moment between Simon and the cat as they say goodbye to each other. Let's break it down in more detail, though, and actually analyze some of this stuff. First of all, I do love... I love the cuteness of that little snowball fight right up top. It's super adorable. Especially like Hazel, like, die until you're dead or whatever she says. It's pretty cute. And then I like Tuba getting involved. Like, Tuba's got a sense of humor and like shows the big one on Simon, and like everyone's having a little chuckle at Simon's expense. Always. I was kind of glad they had Grace discover her number was going down here. I feel like they could have like dragged that out for cheap tension, but it wouldn't have added anything to this season. It would have it's just come on, get on it. Like, you could have done 2 or 3 episodes of slowly showing her number going down without her noticing necessarily. But as we saw at the end of the last episode, it was above the line of her glove. And this episode, it's under it, which is a pretty neat idea because that's how she notices when she takes the glove off. She sort of like, you see her finger to sort of measure it to see that it has in fact gone down. It must be quite hard to keep track of when it's that long. So she's got a lot on her mind when she realizes that as they go in. When they get in there, obviously the cat is present. She's as sassy as ever, complaining that it's the first vacation she's taken in 150 years. And she's joined by tourists. This is before she realizes who's there. I just want to point out, actually, how long has the train existed? I mean, 150 years is a long, long time for this train to have been running. Was it different 150 years ago? Because it seems quite technologically advanced, this train. So 150 years ago, like people from like the late 1800s, 1900s, like early 1900s, like going onto this train wouldn't have just had the culture shock of a train with whole worlds in each car. The technology of it as well would have absolutely melted the brains of anybody from that time. So, how long has this train existed? It raises more questions than it answers, I think. I do like, though, that she has a little holiday home. I also like that she barely uses it by the sound of it. Her performance in this episode, Kate Mulgrew, deserves the most, I think, praise. It's pretty incredible, actually. She's able... It's there in the script. Everything that the cat needs to communicate is there in the words. But she keeps imbuing everything with more meaning and affection that's not necessarily there in the actual exact dialogue. And I'm sure that's the intention, don't get me wrong. I don't think she necessarily came up with that. I'm sure she came in and Owen Dennis was like, look, you're saying this, but your character really is feeling a lot of this. Can you do that? And that's always the trickiest thing for the actor to do is to demonstrate the subjects just in the subtleness of that performance and just like hint at it without actually saying any words that directly do it. It's always really powerful when that happens as well, because the audience pick it straight up. But it's it's very, there's something very true and human about that. You know, you're saying one thing, but you kind of accidentally, through your tone, giving away something else. People do that a lot, and I don't think they realize they do it. So I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, like when she says, "I suppose you can stay for a bit," you know, it's such a simple line, but she imbues it with this. She's just seen Simon, and suddenly she softens so much. The obvious affection that's built into her delivery there. The same can be said for the end of the episode, but we'll come back to that. I think Frank might be the funniest thing that's ever happened in this show. Frank is a bear wearing sunglasses in a robe that's making pancakes in the kitchen. We don't know who he is. We don't know how he knows the cat. But like, Grace walks through the kitchen and they just sort of exchange a glance, and he just does up his robe like, oh, I didn't know we had company. And then he just sort of shows up later drinking his tea. Like, he interrupts them to ask if anybody has any allergies. Like, it's the funniest. I'm not even sure what the joke is. Like, oh, just not the mic. Why not? I'm not even 100% sure I understand like what the exact joke is. Like, it's funny to me, but I can't even really explain to you how. You know, I can't deconstruct what makes that so amusing. I don't know if it's the visual, just the premise that she's just staying with this bear she's befriended, who's acting oh so human. You know, I don't know where the comedy is even coming from, but it's beautifully done. The cat does have a little bit of interaction with Hazel, which we were looking forward to seeing. She does say she doesn't look like the normal Apex riffraff, which I thought was an interesting line. I don't think that means she necessarily knows what Hazel is, because she does seem confused by the dead number. She seems surprised and interested in the dead number, rather than knowing. She doesn't sort of go, yeah, well, you know, like that. Instead, she's sort of like, oh, and then I know I'm just making noises at this point instead of saying words, but there's an intrigue. She's interested. She doesn't already have the answer. You can tell that from her tone. And when Hazel suggests the explanation the Apex have put forward, that 1-1 has turned it off, you can see her sort of thinking that through and then sort of deciding that's probably not the case, and then wanting to get a closer look. So yeah, I don't think the cat knows what's going on, but that certainly caught her interest. So that line, I don't think has double meaning. You don't look like the normal Apex riffraff. She can tell there's something different about Hazel, but I don't think she knows the answer as to what. I just don't want to make anyone think that I'm sort of suggesting that the cat somehow has this all figured out, because I doubt that. But then there's a really there's a really strong exchange between her and Simon, which is kind of one of the more interesting elements of this episode, is just watching them try to like communicate without directly communicating, because there's obviously a lot going on between them, and until towards the end, they don't really voice the concern, so it's all just sort of subtext to all the conversations, but he basically doesn't want the cat anywhere near Hazel. You find out why a little bit later. I've already spoken about it. We'll come into more detail later. The cat sort of is like, okay. She's very. She doesn't argue back with Simon very much in this episode. She's very sort of. What we learn later suggests that she has a certain amount of regret about what happened with Simon, so I think she's a little bit more tolerant with him than with others. Like, I feel like she'd have been a bit more sarcastic with Tulip or Lake or Jesse had they been so aggressive about her with Hazel, but her reaction is very much... You get the impression she's going a bit easier with Simon because she knows she's caused him pain in the past. There's regret, and that leads to that. I should drink my tea. I've got tea here. You'd be glad to know. It's now not so warm outside that I can... Like the last few podcasts I've recorded, no tea with me at all, which is an absolute travesty. But it was far too hot. So yeah, Simon and Grace's conflict is kind of another underpinning of this episode. Actually, before we get to that, I just wanted to point out one other thing. An episode or two ago, I can't remember which one, I noticed that Hazel said, "Don't be daft." And I said, that's such a British phrase, and nothing in this show is not deliberate. Like, it's so specifically British that it made me speculate that Hazel might have been an attempt for Amelia to create some sort of facsimile for a daughter for the life her and Ulrich were going to have. So I speculated maybe that's where she came from, and that's why she has these weird British isms. Just one could be coincidence. Two, though, I think I'm onto something. I do. I'm buying that theory more and more every time this happens. This second one, I mean, it might be the most British phrase. Come on, Tuba, I'll be mother. So for those who don't know, in England, the phrase "I'll be mother" means I'll serve the tea. Basically, it's I'll play the role of the traditional, stereotypical role of mother, because mother used to pour the tea. So if I was going to go, if we had a pot of tea out, which I don't really, in England these days, I don't know how many families still use pots for tea, like regularly. If you have guests around, you probably might do a whole pot, so you can serve a room of tea, like a whole room of like multiple people. But like when we make tea here in my house, we definitely don't crack out the pot very often. But if you have got a pot of tea and you're going to pour for everyone, then yeah, you'd be. I mean, I've never said it truthfully, but it's a well-known phrase, and it is, it's often said with tongue in cheek as well these days, I've noticed. But yeah, it's so absurdly British. Daft, I feel like, has transplanted a bit, and I think people in America have heard it enough, cultural osmosis, that they would know what that means without question. They wouldn't even necessarily even stop to think that it was a British phrase unless asked directly, I suspect. But "I'll be mother" feels really, really specific. So, yeah, I'm still sticking with my Amelia attempting to create a daughter. I think that theory, it lives on, for now at least. Whether I'm right or wrong, who knows? But like, the more that happens relating to that, the more I believe that is what's going on. So I will continue to poke and prod at that theory, because why the hell not? So moving on to Simon and Grace's conflict. They have a really interesting conflict in this episode that I think is already showing the two diverging paths. I've already talked about this. We've got Grace definitely going the opposite way to Simon in general. Her numbers going down. His is definitely going to be going up. I suspect we're going to see potentially a big turn from him in episode 5, because everyone seems to be. We'll talk about this. I'll cover that later. Actually, I've got episode 5. I'm starting to be very worried about because of the reaction online, which is unfortunate. That's coloured my expectations going into it, but I already had some expectations on the fact they chose to do the first 5 together. Felt like something kind of major might happen at the end of 5, but the fact that everyone online is going crazy. Like the other day, Owen tweeted something, and I was like, I think I tweeted and said, "Oh, I've only seen 2 so far," and then someone replied to me like, "Oh, you poor soul," which suggests we're headed to some turmoil pretty shortly. So episode 5. I don't have any specific theories as to what, other than, I guess while we're here we'll talk about it. I was going to say this for the end of the episode, but I guess why not? I do know that episode 5 is likely to end with them separating, because we saw the clips in the trailer of them in the clock car, which is the title of the next episode, of the colored clock car or something like that, or the color clock car. Let me check what it's exactly called, because I'm going to get it wrong and then I'm going to hate myself. And I do enough of that as it is. The color clock car. Cool. So that episode, I know that the color clock car that is a mouthful, is where they in the car. It's got these colorful blocks, and there's a null. They debate the sort of status of with Hazel, who doesn't seem to understand, and she's like, well, Tuba's a null. That's in the trailer, and then you see the shot of them outside of that. You see, that's the one where it like starts shaking and they yell like, a 1-1's found us, and then they go out and you see that Simon and Grace get over the bridge before it disconnects, and you see the two cars separating, and you've got Tuba and Hazel on one side and Simon and Grace on the other. Now, does that mean they're actually going to get separated? Maybe not. Possible. I speculated in the trailer video that Hazel might end up wherever they were supposed to. Whoever's after them isn't after Hazel. They're after the Apex, because Hazel wasn't present in the unfinished car when it was scanned and then moved. So they're not after Hazel, but whoever it is, and I still don't think it's 1-1. I suspect they're going to scan the car, start moving. They're going to get separated, and like from there, there's two ways you go, right? You either end the episode on the dark note of the group has been split, and God knows where Hazel and Tuba are going, or you could even do, go darker than that and have like the reveal of who it is that's after them, which could feel very flattering depending on who that is. Or the other route you go is at a rescue attempt gone wrong, like someone gets hurt because they're trying to like they've only got access to that one harpoon pack, so maybe Simon trying to help get Hazel over, and or maybe they get Hazel back, but they don't have enough time to go back for Tuba, but Simon's kind of like on purpose, like, oh yeah, okay, there you go, there's my theory. So Simon goes over, grabs Hazel, is like, we'll come back for Tuba, do you give me a second, let's get you over, and he zips over with Hazel in his arms, puts Hazel with Grace, then is about to go back for Tuba, but doesn't, and then Tuba ends up shooting off in the carriage. Sort of, he's finally got on his way. He's managed to separate the two. That's pretty sinister. I think it's a pretty dramatic place to leave it off. So there you go, theory. Putting that down on the table. Not planning to flag it as such, because there's a few different ways you could play that out. But that's maybe how I think the next episode might go. But anyway, back to this episode. So the conflict between Simon and Grace here is really good. I think it's clever. It's not so harsh that you sort of don't understand how they're friends again by the end of it. It's like a really perfectly pitched, middle of the road, like the cracks starting to show type falling out, which is that he's frustrated, she's not seeing him, and he's frustrated, and she's just so preoccupied she has no idea that he's even going through stuff, and that digs at him even more. And it forces her in the end to be honest with him about what's been preoccupying her. And again, like with her finding out what her number is, very glad she told him so soon. I didn't want to eke that out of many episodes either. But what I think is really sweet about this, is they have this really sweet like hug. And I might have skipped ahead a bit here actually. Because we haven't really talked about what he finds in the room. Let me just quick check. Oh yeah, the hug comes much later in the episode. Well, we'll tackle it while we're talking about their relationship. Oh god, I'm hopping all over the place this week. Oh well. Yeah, so they have a really sweet moment when they finally make it up later in the episode when Grace says, "This is why I've been distracted. I didn't want to tell you. I'm a bit embarrassed. I didn't want you and the Apex to feel any less of me." And he hugs her and he says, "I'm always with you." And what a bold line. I feel like that's about to be tested massively. I think we're about to throw a massive wedge between these two. Maybe Grace is going to be mad at him for separating them from Tuba if my other theory turns out right. And he's going to be like, what are you talking about? It's a null. We've established that we don't care. And she's sort of starting to feel these regrets and pangs of guilt that she's been feeling in these last episode or two. And that's going to lead to some conflict between them. Yeah, I think we're definitely going to be testing that this season. So it's pretty well done. I liked the sequence where he, I'm going back a little bit in the episode now, but I like the sequence where he goes through the cat's like collection room. His reaction to that I found quite interesting in a few different respects. The room itself mostly filled with ornamental things. Some of the stuff I wrote down that I noticed: teapots, books, a shield and sword, like a skull, like a rolled up rug, yarns, a TV, one of the lucky cats from the Lucky Cat Car, like a small golden one, some clocks, some toys. And then I noticed the noughts and crosses thing from the ball pit car that they used to solve that puzzle. And then like what looked like some of the scaffolding from the ball pit car. Maybe some of that was retrieved. I don't know for what purpose, but she is a bit of a hoarder, the cat. We've established this previously, but she lost all her stuff, if we remember rightly, in the Tulip season, the first season. So I guess she's restarted collecting. There's also like a chalkboard with like a complex looking calculation. I didn't look at it too closely because I knew it wasn't going to make sense to me no matter what I did. If somebody knows anything about what's on that board, I would love to know. Like it could just be a simple math equation, but I thought it meant nothing to me, and it was never going to be anything to me, so I didn't even look at it that closely. But if somebody does feel like that might be something they can have a gander at and see if they can work out, it's probably gibberish, or it's probably just like a basic math equation that just looks good on a board in a room like that. I don't know. Take a look. Let me know if anyone who can figure that out does. I don't even know if it's available enough as an image in high enough quality to actually read it properly, to be honest with you. I didn't even try to zoom in. There's a wooden soldier, which I thought, like a little toy wooden soldier, which seemed to have some significance to Simon, some recognition. So I feel like there's more to the story of Simon in that car. I mean, he paints little figures now, doesn't he? Little soldier figures. I wonder if he painted that wooden figure when he was traveling with the cat. He jumps out of his skin at the model of the gnome, which in that moment, you go, oh, he's had a pass with them too. And then later in the episode, you realise exactly what. Which is that obviously the cat and he travelled together he did say a time frame. I didn't write it down. That's annoying. I wish I had. It was like 6 months, I think he said. Like he travelled with the cat for a while, getting his number down, I guess. He didn't specify that, but you assume. And what set him on the road to the apex was that there was some sort of incident. There was one of those golems coming after him, and the cat got out of dodge because she does put herself first often. She'll help you if it's in her interest, or if she can do it risk-free to herself, but otherwise you're on your own. So he says, you left me alone to die, you left me with a gun. I was 10 years old. Her response is interesting, though, because she doesn't say, like, that's not quite what happened or anything. She just says, you're not wrong. But the pause between not and wrong means that she's sort of saying, yeah, that is physically what happened, but the pause suggests to me there's more to it, and she's not really sure how to explain, or whether she can explain, or whether her explanation is going to seem hollow. So I feel like the cat kind of is holding back a bit there. So I think there's more to that story, both in terms of what the little soldier character was about, and also specifically the circumstances. I think there's going to be a better reason than you think on the surface for the cat having abandoned it. Maybe Amelia sort of pushed for it or requested her to come, or I don't know. So there's something else going on there that I'm not quite seeing. It's just slightly obscured. So yeah. I also found it really interesting that when he talks to Grace about it after he's confronted the cat and he's upset and they're having their conversation, he looks into that room and he says, she's collecting again. Now, that's interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, it seems like Simon and the cat haven't seen each other for a little while at this point. So for her to have known she's stopped... So at some point, when she knew him, she, in quote marks, stopped collecting. For him to now be saying she's collecting again. Like it had stopped happening. But she was already collecting with Tulip. So has she stopped twice? So she was collecting with Simon, stopped, started again, incident with Tulip, lost all her stuff, started again. Bit weird. She's a bit of a hoarder. I think it's I don't even know what her goal is with that. I don't think she has one. I think she is just a bit of a hoarder. But I do find it interesting that he said she's collecting again, suggesting she'd stopped during her time with him. Not because he could. I don't think he's just referencing when she lost all her stuff with Tulip, unless they encountered each other after Tulip. And she said, "Oh, not my mic." Of course I did. Unless they bumped into each other after Tulip, and she said, "I've changed. I'm not collecting anymore because she just lost all her stuff." Maybe it's cleaner, but I'm not sure. So yeah, there's a lot to break down in the past, and I feel like we're going to get more of that. Yeah, I feel like there's more to that story, and I think we're going to get it. I also think it's tricky because you've given him back, and both these characters are in a weird position because they have on-train backstory and pre-train backstory. And normally the structure of the show is you've got a character that's only been on the train for X number of days, which is a smaller amount. Their flashbacks are going to be about their pre-train life, and you're going to find out why they ended up on the train. Now I'm curious about that for both Simon and Grace. But there's also potentially 10 years that they've been on the train that I need filling in too. So I wouldn't mind also seeing. So there's only 6 episodes left. There ain't going to be 4 flashback episodes. So we're not getting something. Now, do we miss out? Do we start? Are we starting to skip the why they're on the train of it all now? Is it a bit sort of predictable? Oh, he fell out with his family. Oh, he accidentally killed his pet iguana. Is the show assuming that we're just going to assume he had some personal problem back on Earth and it's not important? More relevant is, and we'll get flashbacks to incidents on the train, or are we actually going to find out more about that past? I think what they might do is mix and match. Maybe because we kind of can fill in roughly Grace's trajectory on the train, right? Like she doesn't have the sort of cat backstory of intrigue, so maybe you get Grace's reason for being on the train, and with Simon you get a flashback episode of some sort where we tackle exactly what happened with him and the cat. Or are they going to say that's enough information? But I don't feel like that, because I feel like there was a hint that it wasn't as simple as he was making out with the cat. Like the cat had more, unless they just do that in the cat explains herself at a later point. But either way, so maybe you don't find out exactly why he's on the train, but it's kind of not relevant. More relevant is exactly what happened between him and the cat to make him sort of, and because then he bumped into Grace, who sort of saved him, and that's why they've been such good friends since. Whereas with Grace, maybe the reason her numbers going down is related to her. Maybe her reason her numbers going down is related to her past, so we'll need to see her past. Anyway, last 2 points. The Randall puzzle of it all is just genius. The quote, "It took a lot of effort to import that much Randall." When they refer to a blizzard, and Randall's like, "Oh, you mean the snowball fight?" So good. That character, Randall, remains my favourite character of the show. Randall. Put him in everything. I don't care. He's the best. It's so absurdly funny. He never doesn't make me laugh. Make him someone's companion one season, just so I can have a season of Randall. I'll never get tired of him. So basically, for those who don't remember, if you are watching this in the future and you haven't seen the episode recently, the premise is that they got blizzarded in after their snowball fight, and Randall basically thought he was partaking in the snowball fight by becoming a blizzard, because all of the water in this car is Randall. And what they realize is if they talk to a piece of Randall and then boil him so he goes up into the sky, he can tell all the Randalls creating the blizzard to call it off, to call the armistice. It's clever as a premise. You don't expect it. It's also super funny. It also makes a bunch of sense. It shouldn't, but it absolutely fits with everything that you've seen. I mean, what more can you want from a train, from Infinity Train sort of car mystery? How to get out of the car, perfect, just perfect. Clever. Doesn't feel Deus Ex Machina-y. Makes sense of all the information you previously had. You could have maybe put it together if you were paying attention, maybe even. I think that's possible. The motive makes perfect sense for Randall to be even doing that. He thought he was part of a snowball fight. They called back the armistice thing from the start of it, and then they're free to go. Just very very impressed with the writing on that. It's so clean and simple, and it allows for the episode to have all this. You see, you can underestimate an episode's a plot like that in an episode because it's barely part of it really. They're sort of snowed in, and that's the premise, and then all the drama happens. But that plot's simplicity and cleverness is what allows you to get to all the character stuff, because it's such a perfectly chosen plot for this episode, and it's so well paced, and it is so well balanced against the drama. That's why the drama sinks. That's why the drama is so good and gets all this time to get explored and examined. Same with the Toad, Kick the Toad card. I'm still seeing parallels between this season and last season. First 2 episodes get the gang together. Second episode we get a little bit of someone's backstory, Grace in this case. So we start to understand a little bit of why they're like they are. Not the exact reason they got on the train, but close to it. And then an episode where we get to really sit down and have the characters talk about how they sort of feel about it. Although we don't have, like we did with the Toad car, the exact reason that they're on the train. We do have the exact reason there's some animosity between the cat and Simon. And for sure, even though they didn't outright say it, I still maintain he got his little dragon radar from the cat when those two separated. Almost certainly. So yeah, that's stuff. Oh, the other thing, the other last thing I just want to talk about was the ending, which is, I mean, just haunting and sad and heartbreaking and all of the above. There's such meaning. They say goodbye. Basically, all the other characters leave, and it's just Simon. He turns and looks through the door as he's closing it at the cat, and she says au revoir, and he says the same. And they shut. And on paper, it's dramatic and poignant for sure. But Kate Mulgrew particularly is a big part of why that stuff works in this episode, because her performance is just magic. I know I've already talked about it. On paper, it is all there, but the loss and the affection that she can communicate in her tone in a simple sentence during this episode in general is something else. It's otherworldly. It shouldn't work. No one should be that good. But Kate Mulgrew is. Who knew? I did. So yeah, that's covered pretty much everything. Pretty excited. Obviously, 5th episode, clearly it's seeming to be a big one, as I've already hinted. Very much looking forward to finding out what in the world is going on. I'm recording this the day after the previous 2, the Jungle Car and Debutante Ball. I probably won't. I will watch episode 5 almost immediately now because I'm really excited, but I'm probably not going to record that for a day or 2 just to give myself a little bit of space to gather my thoughts on it. But yeah, as I always say, and it's predictable, and I'm super excited and I'm really enjoying the show. I mean, it goes without saying, I think my enthusiasm's coming through, but I always feel like the need at the end to just point out, yeah, so just to summarize, yeah, great episode, really enjoying it, excited for more. And it seems I do it so often now, and it's become like almost the traditional ending for this podcast. It almost seems insincere, but I'm always saying it because I just want to emphasize how true that continues to be. So yeah, thank you guys so much for sticking with me and listening through these. We'll be back hopefully. I mean, these are so far, it looks like these are going to release one day at a time. I've recorded so many of them so quickly that I've been able to do it one a day. So yeah, come back tomorrow, same time, same place, as I discuss the Color Clock car. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you so much, and I'll see you then. Oh, actually, no. I should end on au revoir.